Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And today, well, we got some good news and then also, sadly, some bad news as well for the PlayStation PC initiative. They did just drop a major release into Steam today, which you would think that that's a great thing, which it kind of is, though unfortunately, it hasn't exactly reached expectations or really even remotely close to it. This is a rough one. At the same time, though, it does sound like the PlayStation PC initiative will pick up even more from this point forward, and they might even be alluding to day one PC releases, or at least one upcoming. Also, a new Xbox Series X console leaked out online that could indicate one thing that they want to do with the Activision Blizzard acquisition once it completes. As always, though, we do have a lot to get into today. Do hit those buttons below so you never miss another video again. But I mean, other than that, let's just go ahead and jump right into it, starting off with the Dolphin emulator. Now, if you don't know what Dolphin is, this is a GameCube and Wii emulator that's been around for several years, and a very good one at that. Though the reason that we're talking about it today is because they just announced that they plan to release it directly onto Steam. Now, this isn't out just yet. It is planned for a Q2 release, though you can wishlist it for the time being. Suffice to say, though, I mean, this is absolutely fantastic news, and let me explain why. In their announcement, they noted that this version will run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. In other words, and this is the part that I'm really excited about, you'll be able to install Dolphin directly onto your Steam Deck without all those extra steps. While Dolphin, yes, already runs on the Steam Deck as is, this does make the entire process just that much more convenient, and the Steam Deck is a phenomenal emulation machine. That's actually probably one of my favorite things about the Steam Deck. Really, I think it's just kind of rejuvenated the emulation community to a degree. So adding any kind of convenience whatsoever to its setup just makes it even better. Again, though, if you are interested, you can go ahead and wishlist Dolphin on Steam right now. Now, next up here, let's go and talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake. Capcom has really just been knocking it out of the park with all these different remakes. The thing about Resident Evil 4 in specific is that this is often viewed as a fan favorite in the series. So while the previous games were amazing in their own right, it does feel like there's been even more hype for this specific installment than the previous remakes before it. And that's really showing up now, as the Resident Evil 4 Remake is now officially the second fastest selling entry in the entire franchise, selling 3 million units in just 2 single days. That is pretty impressive. But just to kind of put that in perspective, thanks to Benji Cells, we can actually see here that Resident Evil Village took 4 days to reach 3 million units. It took Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is actually my favorite, 1 week, and then Resident Evil 3 Remake sold 2 million in 5 days. The only Resident Evil game to sell faster was, strangely enough, Resident Evil 6, which sold 4.5 million units in 2 days. Now, considering that game was much more criticized, I do imagine that Resident Evil 4 Remake will ultimately sell more in the long run, but without a doubt, Capcom has yet another huge success in their hands here. Now, they do still need to fix some bugs up and everything, most notably the dead zones on the Xbox version, and then the image quality for the PlayStation 5, but outside of those issues, it is a really good game, and big congrats here to Capcom. I think my main question now, though, is what's next for Capcom? Now that they've gone through the classics, will they continue to remake Resident Evil 5, maybe Code Veronica? They could go in that direction. But if they are indeed finished up with remaking the Resident Evil franchise, I'm just going to kind of go and throw this out there, but there's also the possibility of Dino Crisis. Hey, I'm just saying, let's make it happen, Capcom. Moving on, though, it appears that a new Xbox Series X console just leaked out online. This is coming from Bilbo Kuhn, which, I mean, by this point has more than proven to be a reputable leaker. He leaked Hi-Fi Rush's announcement before it was officially unveiled. He leaked the Mario Day Switch console and the PlayStation Plus lineup almost on a monthly basis. So he has a very good track record. And now, according to Bilbo Kuhn, Xbox has a Diablo 4 console planned. You can see the tweet here, which reads, "Exclusive, upcoming release. A new Xbox Series X Diablo 4 edition is on the way. No idea about its design, but it has the word bundle in its reference. Announcement date to be determined. Release date, June 6, 2023. Price in the United States, $560. So this is pretty interesting stuff here. Really, I'd say for two different reasons. One, Diablo 4 so far has proven to be amazing. By all indication, it appears Diablo 4 will meet its lofty expectations. Fans were going crazy over its beta, and it might actually end up being a Game of the Year candidate when all said and done. It so far does seem to be that good. So to hear it might get a special themed Xbox Series X for such an anticipated game like this, yeah, that's pretty exciting stuff, especially if this is a special design console, similar to what they did with the Halo Xbox Series X just a few years back. It does kind of sound like this console will have a special design, which is great for collectors and big-time fans of the series. More so, though, it's really interesting to hear that Xbox and Activision Blizzard are already kind of partnering up before the acquisition is complete. The acquisition, of course, is still going through regulations and everything, but based on recent news, it is starting to sound like that deal will pass sooner rather than later, and it seems like Microsoft is salivating over the idea of bringing some of these bigger franchises over as first-party titles. You know, Microsoft has always publicly remained confident that the buyout will close by June or earlier, and I mean, now things are really starting to trend in that direction. So everything is kind of lining up here for Activision Blizzard to be under the Xbox umbrella by the time Diablo 4 releases this June. So, I mean, what better way to commemorate the acquisition than by launching Diablo 4, one of this year's biggest games, as a first-party Xbox title with their marketing, a new special edition Xbox Series X console, and maybe an Xbox Game Pass release as well. If anything, Xbox clearly recognizes the importance of Diablo 4 because you don't make a special edition console unless a game is that important to your brand, and as strange as it may sound, Diablo 4 might be a premier first-party game for Xbox before its official release, and one of their most important franchises from this point forward. Oh, and PlayStation, they just revealed their April PlayStation Plus lineup, which has yet another nice little surprise here. As you can see, this includes Meet Your Maker, Sackboy Big Adventure, and then also Tales of Iron. Now, first things first, this is a quality lineup of games. Sackboy Big Adventure, that is a very solid 3D platformer. If you've played any of the other Little Big Planet games before it, you're probably going to really enjoy this game. It actually does transition very well into a 3D platformer, even though it was made by a different developer, being Sumo Digital. They did a stand-up job in capturing the charming world and just some of the different gadgets that you can use throughout its gameplay. It also actually makes for a really good cooperative game as well, so if you haven't played this game already, definitely go check it out if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber. Tales of Iron is also known as a quality 2D action RPG. It's often praised for its Souls-like gameplay and surprisingly good story. The highlight of this lineup, though, is Meet Your Maker, which is a first-person building and raiding game where every level is designed by players. Now, it looks like it could be an overall fun game, but the reason that this game stands out so much is because this is yet another day one release for PlayStation Plus. It does appear that Sony is investing into more of these day one releases as of recent, which that is great to see. Last month, PlayStation Plus Extra subscribers got Chia, and now Meet Your Maker is coming to all PlayStation Plus subscribers. See, I talk about it all the time on this channel, but this is exactly why you want competition. With the success that Xbox Game Pass has had, it's also put a lot of pressure on the Sony to make their service better. Competition breeds excellence, and gamers reap the reward. If you are interested in any of these games, though, and if you're subscribed to PlayStation Plus, they will be ready to download on April 4th. Now, actually, speaking of PlayStation, though, let's just go and talk about their PC initiative. This is something that they've been doing for a few years now, where they port their first-party games over to PC, and they did just drop one of their most beloved games ever, The Last of Us Part 1, onto Steam. So this should, and that's the key word here, should be a very exciting launch for the PC community. It's a great game with a fantastic story, but unfortunately, that's not exactly how all this played out. Instead, as sad as it may be, the PC port is facing a lot of criticism for various different reasons. You can actually see here the user reviews right now on Steam sits at a 33% approval rating with more than 7,000 reviews, which, I mean, that kind of tells you everything that you need to know. When reviews are that low with that many reviews, yeah, there's some kind of very serious problem here. And in this case, it ultimately seems like it comes down to optimization issues and poor performance. Reportedly, it's crashing constantly, like multiple times in an hour of gameplay, which, I mean, that alone, that's already bad enough. But to make matters worse, several users have complained about issues with refunds as well. And the reason for that is because of how this game tracks playtime and how Steam refunds work. So the way Steam works is that as long as you play a game less than 2 hours, you can request a refund and just be done with it. But in the case of The Last of Us Part 1, before you can even play the game, you need to compile shaders, which apparently takes about an hour long, and the problem here is that goes towards the game's playtime. Then after that, to make matters worse, as many of you may know, the first hour of The Last of Us is very cutscene heavy, so a lot of players are kind of complaining that by the time they actually get to play the game, their chances of a refund is, already gone because they've eclipsed that 2-hour margin. So, I mean, yeah, it's just this whole big mess right now, which is, it's just so unfortunate because this really is a good game. And I'm sure a lot of people was very excited to jump in after the HBO show ended earlier this month. For the time being, though, if you are interested in this game, it's probably best to just kind of wait for a patch to fix the problems that fans are currently dealing with right now. Speaking of Sony's PC initiative, though, Naughty Dog actually made a big statement about The Last of Us PC launch, and they had something very interesting to say here. They said, "So where will the next Naughty Dog development adventure take us? Rest assured, PlayStation and PC players were already looking forward to sharing more, whether you prefer a DualSense controller or a keyboard and mouse. Developing for both platforms empowers us to incorporate lessons learned from either into the overall design of our games. Sharing our stories and experiences on PlayStation 5 as well as PC is something that Naughty Dog has embraced and will continue to support moving forward." So it does sound like Naughty Dog, Sony's most praised studio, is alluding to more PC releases going forward. Now, this can be viewed in a number of different ways. Some do believe they'll release future games day and date on PC, and I do think to a degree that makes sense. I actually do believe that is very possible in the case of their upcoming multiplayer game. Factions, or whatever they want to call it, I think that makes perfect sense to release that on PC alongside PlayStation. It is set up to be a live service game, and with both of those platforms combined, that would give it a better opportunity to have success. Now, will they do that with their next single-player game? That really is the big question here, and that does kind of remain to be seen. That's probably a little more unlikely. But what I think could happen here is that Sony will continue to port their older games to PC. They could still port Uncharted 1 through 3. Yeah, they did it a little bit backwards, but they could do that. They could also bring over The Last of Us Part 2, and hey, maybe even the Jak and Daxter collection. Now, that would be really cool to see get a PC release. So I think that there are a lot of possibilities here, but one thing is absolutely for certain. The Last of Us Part 1 is not the last Naughty Dog game coming to PC. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all if you've both watched and played The Last of Us, which one do you think is better? And as you can see here, the results were rather lopsided, with 50% of you all voting for The Last of Us game, while only 9% of you all voted for The Last of Us HBO show. And yeah, I am completely with you all on this one. I do agree. I think The Last of Us game is quite a bit better, and I don't think that it's particularly close in this case. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think that it's a good video game adaptation, but there's a big but here. I was disappointed in the show. As some of you all know, I was very excited going into The Last of Us show because it was my chance to show my wife a story that I hold in high regards. I think that The Last of Us is one of the better video game stories out there. It has these amazing characters. It's got a great world. It's just very atmospheric. And the way it ends, there's just this profound impact that it leaves on you. But unfortunately, as we got into the show, I thought the first episode was good. I also thought the 8th episode was really good as well, though I still had some issues with it. I'm not going to get into each episode and all the different problems I had with it, but I feel like the issues that I had were really for 3 different reasons. One, I feel like they kind of lost sight of what the game is supposed to be about, and that is Ellie and Joel. They should have developed their relationship more, but instead they decided to focus on a lot of side stories that had little to no impact on the overall story at all. I mean, I feel like there's 2 episodes at least that could have been majorly shortened, and what makes that even worse is that other episodes just felt like they were completely rushed. You take a look at the last episode, and it was like 40-some minutes long. It should have been far longer than that, but instead, they prioritized other episodes that had either zero impact to the overall story or very little. You take a look at the Left Behind DLC, that was a poorly paced episode that could have probably been wrapped up in about 10 to 20 minutes with some type of flashback. The Bill and Frank episode, while a well-told story in its own right, that story didn't even exist in the game and did not push the narrative forward at all, yet it was also the longest episode in the entire series, whereas the last episode, which was supposed to be that big aha moment, it only got 40 minutes of runtime. So I just feel like they kind of lost sight of what this show was about. And I mean, for that matter, where was all the infected? They showed up in like 2 episodes and that was it. And that is supposed to be a huge part of The Last of Us. The other issue that I kind of had was with Ellie. I feel like she was less likable in the show. And now let me first kind of start off by saying I think that Bella Ramsey did a great job in acting. She's a very good actress. But I feel like her portrayal, and then also with how she was written in the show, she just was not as likable. In the game, she seemed more caring. She was a little bit more innocent and just awe-inspiring of the world around her. Whereas in the show, she was written as a little more aggressive. She was a little more morbid and dark. And I felt like because of all of that, she felt a little less likable in the show version. Now, I think the reason that they kind of wrote her that way in the show is because they want to set up season 2. But again, I don't know. I just felt like the game version of her was much more likable. All in all, though, I still feel like this is a good game to show adaptation. But yeah, I was still disappointed, all things considered. Truthfully, if you've never played the game and if you've never watched the show, I would just recommend playing the game because I do think that it is much better. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.